Here we go. This is TJ to Johnny, the Rentrepreneur. For folks who know me, know that I am what you consider a landlord host, and I also execute the known strategy called rental arbitrage. Well, the question is that I get a lot is, should I own or should I rent my Airbnbs? Well, we're gonna be comparing those two strategies here in this video. Tap in. Here we go. So the question is, should I rent or should I own my Airbnbs? Well, the great news is that although your means of acquisitions may be different, the means of execution is the same. So because you literally need the same infrastructure and the same team to run it, whether you're owning it or you're renting it. So in conclusion, there's no reason why you can't do both. So when it comes to this short-term rental business, there are three primary ways to get into this business. For one, you can own the property, which I like to consider landlord host, meaning whether you own the property and you live in it and you're able to rent out one of the rooms, or maybe you have a full property that is solely dedicated to be an investment property and is solely dedicated to be a short-term rental property, that can make you a landlord host, which of course that's great. That should be the goal. I believe no matter which strategy you do, the goal should always be to get to number one, which is ownership. The second one is rental arbitrage. Rental arbitrage, this is the control without ownership. You may also being referred to this as rent to rent, right? You may also hear this being referred to this as a master lease. What we're doing with rental arbitrage is we are not owning these short-term rental properties. We are renting these short-term rental properties long-term, and then we're re-renting the use of the property short-term. And then the third is co-hosting. Well, for this, to all intents and purposes of this particular video, we're going to be focused on number one and two, but co-hosting is also a very great strategy that you can use to get into this game. With co-hosting, you don't own it, nor do you manage it. You are essentially just facilitating somebody else's right to do the business. You're managing their property for them. So maybe it's somebody that's already an existing short-term rental investor and you're able to take over their portfolio to manage it for them. Or maybe it's a landlord who has never been in the game before, but they want to get into short-term rentals, but they want a complete hands-off turnkey process. And that's completely okay. The going rate for co-hosting usually is about 25% of the top line revenue. That's 25% of the gross profit. So all three of these strategies, they work amazing. They really do. But the question is, which one should you do? Which one should you at least start your business with? And we're going to run that comparative analysis just based on number one and two, owning and rental arbitrage for all intents and purposes for this video. So let's look at some of the upsides of rental arbitrage to start off with. Rental arbitrage is the simple act of making a transparent agreement with the landlord to pay a monthly rent and then renting out the property as a short-term rental. Benefits over ownership include faster to set up. And yes, it can be faster to set up because why? Because what we're focused on with rental arbitrage is securing that lease. Now the key is you have to secure it the right way, which we talk a lot about that in other videos. But when you're able to secure that lease, then you're off to the races. So the barrier to entry is quite low. Because the barrier to entry is so low, you don't have to go through the home buying process. So you can really get to the cash flow bag as fast as humanly possible with rental arbitrage. And it can be a mobile business. I know a lot of folks don't really see that or think that rental arbitrage can be a mobile business, but yes, it can. I literally, today, as I am shooting this video, I'm in the process of moving a unit right now from one unit to another unit. The great thing is that once you actually master the art of rental arbitrage in terms of having that conversation with landlords and property managers for them to be intrigued enough to do business with you, you are able to scale your business as fast as you want. So it can be mobile. If you need to move out of one location, and you can move it into another one. So yes, it 100% can be a mobile business. You control this asset. But yes, you don't own this asset, but you do control it for the meantime of that lease term, which is great because if you understand anything about control without ownership, about being a middleman, about rental arbitrage, you know that in business, that is where the money is. There's a lot of money in being a middleman. There's a lot of money with controlling an asset, selling the use of the asset without owning it. So let's look at some downsides of rental arbitrage. And yes, there are downsides, right? Of course, you get no tax benefits. Pretty much all the benefits of home ownership you don't get when you enter arbitrage. So there's no tax benefits, so there's no depreciation. There's no equity. There's no appreciation as well. People are not paying down your mortgage. And we talked about how it was a low barrier to entry, how that is a great thing. That's an upside for rental arbitrage. But the fact that it's a low barrier to entry can also be a downside for rental arbitrage. I'll give you an example. In Houston, the market that I mainly play in, Between the months of May 2021 and September 2021, the number of rental arbitrage units increased by almost 50%. Now, unfortunately, the bad news is that a lot of these folks that tapped in and got these units up and running, they are just people just trying to earn a quick buck on Airbnb. They're not letting the landlords know what they're doing. They positioning themselves that they're going to live in the property and then making it a Airbnb. And it's not bode well because they don't know how to handle security issues. They don't know how to handle turnover issues. They don't know how to screen their guests properly. As such, now the landlord is not getting a good experience, or that REIT, that apartment complex, is not getting a good experience, which hurts the entire short-term rental economy as a whole. So the fact that it's a low barrier to entry is a good thing, but it also can be a bad thing. So let's talk about ownership, which of course, as I mentioned earlier, I am a landlord host. My very first short-term rental was one that I owned. So I value ownership quite a bit. While involving more time and capital, yes, it can be more capital intensive depending on how you purchase the property. While involving more time and capital, property ownership has many benefits over rental arbitrage. And yes, it includes higher income for one, because if you're buying these properties right, and I like to preference this, when it comes to real estate ownership, honestly, it doesn't matter which exit that you do. I don't care if you make it a short-term rental property. It doesn't matter if it becomes a long-term rental, or you wholesale the deal, or you do a fix and flip on the deal. Whatever the case may be, you make your money when you buy. And so goes the same for the short-term rental strategy. One of my very key rules of thumb is that I don't buy any piece of property that I'm gonna make a short-term rental if that property will not cash flow as a traditional rental. This is why we get a lot higher income, and we're able to get that at minimum 3x the cash flow as a long-term tenant, because we're buying it the right way, and then we convert these properties to short-term rentals. Of course, you get the benefit of the appreciation. Yeah, this is one of the benefits, right? Because when you own real estate, property value goes up. That's a historic fact. Then it's the depreciation. This is your tax benefits. You get to take advantage of the fact that you can depreciate that asset. And of course, the cash flow, right? We talked about how you can see increase of cash flow. For us, we're getting at minimum 3x the cash flow we would with a long-term rental, making that property a short-term rental. At the end of the day, understand that there's money to be made. Regardless of whether you plan on arbitraging or you owning these short-term rentals, there is money to be made. While margins are higher if you own a property, there are plenty of profits for those looking to make a rental arbitrage play. Keep your standards high and keep looking until you find a deal that is worthy of your time. See, at the end of the day, we love rental arbitrage in our business, and we incorporate rental arbitrage in our business. And I think it's a great strategy for anybody that's looking to get into the short-term rental bag. But at the end of the day, I believe that ownership should be the goal. Ownership is where the wealth is. And I don't care how you get to the path of ownership, whether you do what I like to consider going from phase 1 to phase 2, where you are arbitraging these units, or maybe you even co-hosting these units, building that nest egg, building that house deposit cash flow on a monthly basis, and then you take that money and turn around and purchase a turnkey property. Whether you do that, or you like to buy them the way I like to buy them, leveraging private capital. We buy them distressed, we buy them ugly, make them beautiful, all with private money. We furnish them, all with private money, and then we turn them into full-time short-term rentals. Like I mentioned earlier, the goal should always be ownership, but at the end of the day, there's no reason why you can't execute both strategies. So, quick aside for you, because in my particular market in Houston, I do not even entertain a rental arbitrage deal if I know it won't net me at minimum $800 a month. Now, that is what I'm seeing, and that's what my threshold is in Houston. It may be different for you in your particular marketplace, but just want to let you know that you should set boundaries for yourself when you're looking at these properties to arbitrage. So last point I want to share with y'all regarding rental arbitrage is to understand that you shouldn't beg for value. Understand the value that you give. The last secret to rental arbitrage is to understand the value that you bring to the landlord of a property. You are the ideal tenant. Therefore, you are not begging for an opportunity, you're giving them the opportunity. I remember when I first got started in my short-term rental journey, when I started doing arbitrage, I started having these conversations with landlords. And when I tell you I fumbled the ball so hard, when I first started, my conversations were more so like, oh, Mr. Landlord, Mrs. Landlord, The property's beautiful, I'm trying to rent it out. Can I rent it? I'm trying to do this Airbnb thing. So as you can imagine, those conversations probably didn't go well. Matter of fact, I can remember a time vividly where I got laughed at, and it was nothing funny about the situation. Okay, so at the end of the day, what made that drastic shift for me in my business was when I finally understood the value that I brought. My conversation now switched to when I would talk to landlords, I was like, man, it's actually in your best interest to work with me. I will feel bad for you if you don't work with me. Because guess what? I'm the perfect tenant. Not only am I your perfect tenant, but I'm your ideal tenant. And ain't nobody gonna take care of your property the way I am. So understand that the mindset shift is crucial. Don't come from a place of timidity, like where you're timid. Don't come from a place of scarcity. Come from a place of posture yourself, understanding the value that you bring to these landlords. When you go into these conversations, the main goal is to speak to their pain points, address the things that matter to them, okay? Understand the plight of a landlord and get them intrigued enough to want to do business with you. And if they don't want to do business with you, you should feel in your being like, man, I feel bad for them because I had an opportunity they have an opportunity for me to be their perfect tenant. Understand the value that you bring and watch how your conversations change with rental arbitrage. So as you could tell, I love adding value like this about this amazing strategy that changed my life. So if you like this video, go ahead and do me a solid, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you check out our next video.